Everyone always arguing about who's the best Lover Arcana girl is. But you know what I'm wondering? Which one of their personas actually has the most Rizz? Today, I'm ranking 8 Lover Arcana personas based on how much Rizz their myth give them. We'll go through each story, then place them on a tier list. And I have hidden game-changing twists along the way, so trust me, you won't see the final ranking coming. A long time ago, Japan was divided into many smaller communities, each with its own leaders. For years, those groups were constantly fighting and no one could keep the peace. Then, out of all the possible choices, the people agreed to someone unexpected. A woman known for her skill in magic and ritual. Her name was Himiko. Once she became ruler, she lived almost completely out of sight. She didn't walk among her people or appear in public. Instead, she gave her orders to her younger brother. She was also said to be surrounded by hundreds of female attendants. Interestingly, her rule wasn't about speeches or army. It was about spiritual authority. Eventually, her reputation even reaches the mainland. A powerful empire across the sea who recognized her as the official leaders of her people, sending her via gift and a title of honors. For a time, the fighting stopped and the country was stable. For the ranking, while Himiko as a persona fit Rizz quite well, as both essentially idolized by those around them, Himiko's reputation is more about respect and admiration than the kind of romantic charisma we culting here. So I'll place her in C. In Buddhist tradition, Kanzeon is known as the one who hears the cries of the world. The story says that if someone calls out with a true and focused heart, Kanzeon will answer. But here's what makes them unique. They don't appear in just one form. They can take the shape of anyone, man, woman, child, or even something less expected. Over time, people describe many ways Kanzeon would appear, sometimes with 11 faces, each one watching over a different direction, sometimes with 1,000 arms, each hand ready to pull someone from danger. For the rankings, once again, Kanzeon fit Rizz as a navigator quite well. Those many faces and arms aren't just for spotting people in need, but also for helping many at the same time. Still, Kanzeon's role is more about compassion and guidance than the kind of Rizz we're looking for here. And honestly, it surprised me a bit when I learned about her and Himiko, because the link between Rizz and her persona seemed to be more about being idolized and admiration rather than whatever this is.
ななこちゃんにも新年の挨拶しないとね。あ、もちろん堂島さんにも。うちからおせち持っていこうかな。おばあちゃんの手作りだよ。やっぱ先輩のうちはパス。だっておばあちゃんに着付けてもらったんだもん。ほどいたら戻せない。
That said, I still have to place them in C. Now, before we move on, there's something I want you to keep an eye on. From here on out, I'm going to give you a number at the end of each section. I'm not going to tell you what those numbers mean yet, only that each one is directly connected to the persona we just talked about. And when we get to the end, those numbers are going to decide something important about the final ranking. So far, Himiko's number is 0, and Kanzeon is also 0. Io was a young woman from a powerful family, serving as a priestess to Hera, the queen of the gods. Life was ordinary enough until Zeus, king of the gods, noticed her. One day, they were together when Hera suddenly showed up. Panicking, Zeus turned Io into a beautiful white cow to hide her. But Hera wasn't fooled. She asked for the cow as a gift, and once Zeus agreed, she set a giant watchman to guard her. Zeus then sent Hermes to rescue Io. Hermes played music and told stories until the guard finally fell asleep, and that's when Hermes struck, killing him. Io, who was still a cow then, was free, at least for a moment. But Hera quickly sent a stinging gadfly after her, driving her to wander endlessly across the lands and seas, never able to rest. Eventually, she reached Egypt, where Zeus restored her to human form. In Greek mythology, she is described as beautiful, as most of Zeus' lovers are, but her stories are remembered more for the trial she's went through than for her charisma. For the rankings, I think she's belong in B. She's notably and admirable, but in terms of pure Rizz, she's not quite on the level of the top contenders. And for her secrets number, it's 1. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Isis is a goddess known for love, loyalties, and a determination that nothing could break. She was married to Osiris, a king who brought peace and prosperities to the lands. But Osiris has a jealous brother named Sif. One day, Sif tricked him, trapped him inside a chest, and threw it into the river. Isis refused to give up. She searches across the land until she found the chest, but Sif struck again. This time, he destroyed Osiris' body and scattered the pieces. Most people would have stopped here, but Isis gathers every part she could find, except for one. And with her magic brought Osiris back to life, enough to conceive their son, Horus. The one piece she couldn't recover? Well, let's just say it was eaten by a fish. And it was replaced using Isis' magic instead. Even with all of that, Osiris couldn't stay in the world of the living, and he became the ruler of the underworld instead. For the ranking, while I'm sure plenty of people would be more than happy to have Isis as their partner, the story is more about devotion, cleverness, and persistence more than it is about charm or seduction. I think B is the right place for her, and like Io, her number is 1. Carmen's stories come from the 19th century novella that later became one of the most famous operas in the world. It started with a soldier living pretty straightforward life and doing his job until he crossed his path with Carmen, a factory worker whose confidence beautiful and impossible to ignore. One day she gets in trouble at work and he's orders to take her away, but along the way she somehow convinces him to let her go. That choice changes everything. He leaves the army, follow her into the world of smugglers and danger, and fall completely under her spell. But Carmen isn't someone who belongs to anyone. She comes and goes as she pleases, loves who she wants, and refuses to be tied down. Eventually, the tension breaks. He begged her to stay with him, and she refused, saying she'd rather die free than live under someone's control. And that's exactly what happened. He killed her, then turned himself in. For the ranking, Carmen's charm is undeniable, but compared to some of the others on this list, I think A fits her best. Her secret number, though, is the highest so far. It's 3. In Greek mythology, Hecate is a titaness, part of the older generation of divine beings who exist before the Olympian gods. When the Olympians overthrew the Titans, Zeus didn't punish her like the others. In fact, he liked her so much that he gave her influence over land, the sea, and the sky. Over time, her image shifted. She became known as a night wanderer, often carrying torches, and people call on her for protection or to guard the boundaries of their homes. Shrines to her were built at crossroads, and offerings were left there to keep trouble away. She often shown with 3 faces or 3 bodies, representing different aspects of her power, but her myth don't really focus on beauty or seduction. The only hint of that is the idea that Zeus held her in special regard. For the ranking, as fascinating as she is, there's not much here that speaks to charm in the way we're counting it. I think C is where she fit, and her number is 0. In the oldest Greek story, Eros, or Cupid, isn't the cute little winged boy you see on Valentine cards. He's one of the very first beings to exist, and his job was simple but extremely important: make creatures feel desires. That desire is what brought the world together. Without him, nothing would have come to life. Later, the story shifts. Poets start saying he's a child of Aphrodite, the goddess of beauties. That makes him more playful, sometimes mischievous, the guy who shoots arrows that make you fall hopelessly in love, whether you plan to or not. He's usually shown as a handsome young man, winged, carrying a bow and arrow, and in Plato writing, Eros isn't just about romance or beauty. He's represent the force that drive us to seek beauty and truth itself. For the ranking, Eros is basically the idea of desire itself, giving form. So I can't see him fitting anywhere but S. And his secret number is 1. Venus, or Aphrodite, if we're going by the Greek name, is the goddess of love, beauties, and desire. She's also one of the most famous figures in all of mythology. One of her best known story is called The Judgment of Paris. And no, not the city. Paris was a Trojan prince who got stuck with an impossible job. Decide which of 3 goddesses was the most beautiful. Hera, the queen of the gods, offered him the power to rule every kingdom. Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, promised to make him the greatest warrior alive. And Venus, she promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. In the end, Paris gave her the win. Now, sure, you could say it was just because of the reward she promised, and that's probably part of it. But in a lot of versions, it's also about her own presence, the way she's carried herself, the confidence, the charm. Even standing next to the 2 of the most powerful and stunning goddesses in the world, she still managed to pull all of the attention to her. Like Eros, she's pretty much the embodiment of beauty and charisma, or Rizz as people would say now. There's really nowhere else she fit but S. And her secret number is the biggest one in the list, 5. Now, looking at the final tiers before the bonus, it's hard to miss that the top spots are held by Eros and Venus, 2 figures that pretty much embody beauty's charisma and everything we would now call Rizz. You could argue it's a little unfair for the rest of the list, since they're basically the standard everyone else is being compared to. But that's where the secret numbers comes in. However, even with it, will it be enough to shake things up? Well, let me tell you what those numbers I've been giving to the personas were. They were the numbers of lover each persona had in their more common myth. And it was already decided before I even did the research that at the end of the list, whoever had the most lover would move up 1 tier in the final ranking. And with 5 lover, possibly even more if I look more into more side lore, Venus takes the bonus, which means she moved up from S to a brand new double S tier, sitting above even Eros. It's an interesting contrast too. Her son, the god of desire himself, is remembered in the myth for having just 1 wife, Psyche, and being faithful to her. Venus, meanwhile, outscored everyone in, well, love itself, and now she's hold the top spot alone, which can be seen as either amazing or a little sad, depending on how you look at it. If you like this mix of game lore and mythology, there are more like it on the channel. Thanks for watching and for keeping these stories alive.